The first category of questions we're going to get into is in case interview strategy and execution. And so these questions are going to be just quick hitting. I'm going to direct them to either one coach. We have a few questions that are open for all of those coaches to answer, but we're going to get through just as many questions as we can, and this just happens to be the first category. So let's start off with a fun one. What's the biggest mistakes that you've seen candidates make in their case prep strategy? And let's just go for this one, go in alphabetical order. So Ish, do you mind answering this one first?
Thanks, Jacob. That's a good question. I think the one that really comes to mind, and I see this a lot in the candidates that I coach, is coming in memorizing frameworks. I can't tell you the number of times who people who come in and are like, okay, I have this template of memorized frameworks like a profitability or a market entry type of template. And then when I give them a challenging case or something that they have not encountered before, they're trying to force feed and trying to template match to what they've learned, and it usually falls apart very quickly. So, as part of my coaching, and this is generally what coaches at Management Consultant do, is teach you a general method of creating frameworks so that you don't fall into this trap. And the big mistake that I see in candidates is to just memorize a set of frameworks. So that's the one that I'll answer.
Great way to kick us off. Thank you so much, Tobe. I agree. When you get into the canned frameworks, you start to sound a little bit like a robot, and you tend to not tailor your frameworks to the actual case prompt. So super important. Mark, love to get your perspective.
Yeah. So Ish, totally agree. That's a great point. I would say to put it simply, I would say answering questions without a process. So whether it's a math problem or a brainstorming question, something that seems like it might have a simple answer right off the bat, people I've seen at least are very quick to just jump right to answering and saying, "Oh yeah, I know how to do this math problem." You go 1, 2, 3, 4, and boom, there's your answer. Or with a brainstorming, "Oh yeah, one thing they could do is this, and they could also do this." So I would say is the biggest mistake. And a lot of the times with these case interviews, the process is a lot of what they're evaluating you on, right? Because they want to make sure that you're answering the questions not only accurately, hopefully, but in a professional manner, right? So it's important for every question to, first take some time to think, hypothesize on how you want to approach the question, then actually go through the analysis with the interviewer, and then finally synthesize and relate that answer back to the broader objective or the broader prompt that you were given. So I think the way similar to how I kind of go through case interviews with my coachees, I guess. I try to instill these process like approaches to answering the different components of a case interview or of a case interview. So I really want to stress that it's important that every question is answered with those professional approaches.
Process is king. Don't ramble. Beautiful. Tobe, love to get your take on this.
Yeah, no, I think both those are very, very valid. And definitely, that's stuff I'll be telling my mentees to do as well. I think for me, it's one of the first things I do when I start casing or taking someone through case studies is sort of talking them through the movement of a case. So you have to sort of know the movement, the scores, and linkages, right? And so the whole idea of movement is that a case is like a piece of music. And a piece of music in this particular case has three movements, right? There's movement one, movement two, movement three. Movement one is sort of the opening of the opening of the case. So it's sort of your case prompt, clarifying questions, your case structure. Movement two is sort of the value of shadow of death, is where most people die. So it's the activities, it's the brainstorming, it's the case matter and insights, it's the insights, it's maybe some market sizing as well. And then movement three is the crescendo, it's the case conclusion. So just knowing where you are at any point in the case and then knowing what good looks like for each of those as well is extremely important. Because otherwise you're just kind of scrambled. You don't really know where you are, what you're meant to be doing, and then also being able to link. So strategy is like probably one of the most misused words, but if it means anything, it means coherence. And so being able to say, okay, this is the case prompt or business problem we're solving, but then this exhibit 1, 2, 3, and here's how I've linked all these ideas together is very important. And a lot of people don't do that. They sort of do things discreetly. So you have to know where you are, but you also have to know how to link between all those things as well. So I'd say that's usually the biggest mistake most people make, is not knowing how to do that.
Tying the different pieces of the case together, tying it back to the original business problem, tying your thoughts together, absolutely a huge part of being a second level caser. Tobe, I'll give you like a break. So I'm going to go to Mark for the second question, and then I'll come back to you for that, so you get a chance to catch your breath. So Mark, I've got folks looking just for some like examples, some specific kind of maybe sample insights for a brainstorming or a math question. For the sake of this, maybe let's just choose one or the other. I would go with math. I think that's a bit more of a challenge for folks than brainstorming, but I'll kind of leave that up to you.
Sure. I do have a good answer to this, and I'll try to quickly touch on the brainstorming as well, just if it helps people. And I want to try to answer this in a way that people can use for any situation they're in. So with a math, the best type of insight to always give right after you've gotten to your final answer is to do what I call quantitatively contextualizing that number. So let's say you get $100 million as your final incremental profitability, let's say, right? You always want to do some final, like, quick math trick to baseline or benchmark that number to another number that was in the question. So for example, in what I just said right now, right, 100 million in new profit, right? If current profitability is $1 billion, right? Then you can just quickly do 100 divided by $1 billion, say it's a 10% uplift in current profit if we're going to make $100 million, right? So that last little math step, I think, is so key to contextualizing your number into, current state, right? And that's usually what you want to do, is take the answer, compare it to some current state figure that you were given, whether it's current revenue, current profit. If it's not current state, it might be like comparing option A to option B, and option A might be, X% more than option B. And in that case, it's not baselining, but it's benchmarking, right? So always that quantitative comparison. For brainstorming, the insight is, I would just say, of all the options you've given, pick, the one option that you think is the most effective, or the best one, prioritize it, and, give some thoughts on how you might implement it, right? Or what might come next to help implement it, and, what the difficulties might be with that, or the benefits might be with that. And that's how you kind of address both of those types of problems.
Super insightful. Thanks, Mark. Especially like the last point about prioritizing your responses to a brainstorming question and structuring that. So it's rather than just going off on a tangent of random ideas. Tobe, let's come back to you for this previous question. When should I state a hypothesis, or should I state a hypothesis in the structuring portion of the case? Do I do it after each bucket, at the end, at the beginning? What do you have to say?
I'm going to be sacrilegious here. I hate it. I don't like it at all. I think it's very superfluous. I think it's extremely unnecessary. And then I think what it does is just to sort of distract people. Now, having said all that, it's still fine to do it. And if you are going to do it, then do it right at the start. And I think it should be incidental. That is, or for instance, it's, say it's a profitability case. It's like an airplane manufacturer in Virginia, and you're not sure what exactly is causing profitability, but you've been given some context in the case or prompt. I think you could maybe lead with, potentially maybe because of what's happening in the economy with inflation, maybe inflationary pressures are causing cost rises, for instance, right? So I'm going to see if that indeed is the case. You could do that. I don't know that it ever actually sways the interviewer's mind, because even if you did that, you would still have to absolutely dissect every serious possible measure before you then went forward, right? And having stated your hypothesis, it could be that it's immediately refuted by some data you get. And that's fine. That's actually part of the process, because that's what would happen in real life as well. Do you have to do it? No. If you want to do it, it should be incidental. It should have some type of rationale. And don't make a fuss about it. Like it's not the end of the world at all. I know people who sort of try to think about how to do it, but then end up bungling the actual case structure. So I'm like, it's not that important. If you must do it, let it be incidental.
We're here for all of the sacrilegious takes, Tobe, so I don't think anybody here is offended. But I appreciate your insight on this. Ish, this is a question we get a ton. Like, does my prep need to change, between the first and the second round? Like, I've passed the first round, and I've been invited to go to the final round. Like, does my prep need to change?
Awesome. Before I answer that, I just wanted to agree with Tobe with the previous answer. I do not recommend doing a hypothesis at the beginning of a case either without much information. But anyway, so with regards to final round, I think first thing you need to do is keep up whatever practice that you have. I see a lot of candidates who pass first round and then they get very comfortable. And as a result of that, they're like, okay, I'm gonna not maintain my prep as much, or I'm going to take a little break. And then what happens with that break is they lose the muscle that they've built. So I really recommend keeping up your prep between first round and second round. It really depends what kind of a window you have. Some firms give you a week, some firms give you a number of weeks, but usually it's a short turnaround. So most important thing is to keep up your prep in between. And the second thing is you have to understand what the context of the final round is. So you're likely going to be interviewed by senior folks in a firm, partners, managing directors. So everything becomes way more high stakes. And you also have to realize what these individuals care about. Of course, they know from your first round that you can do a case interview, but they also look at other things. For example, executive presence and how do you speak and how do you communicate yourself. Because a senior partner, what they're thinking is, can I put this person in front of a client? So they're assessing that aspect when they're interviewing you, and they're also assessing cultural fit with the office. So those are things that you have to keep in mind while you're prepping. The other thing that you really do have to like prepare a bit is be aware of unstructured cases. I've had several candidates who have received unstructured cases during their final round. We have an article here at Management Consulted on the unstructured case process, but briefly, it is a case that you don't expect to be a case. And so I've had one candidate who I debriefed with after her interview, and she told me, "Oh, I didn't really get a case." And I was like, "Okay, that's interesting. Tell me more. Like, what was your interview like?" And she basically said it was conversational, asking questions about different things, and didn't really go through emotions of a formal case. And I told her that that was the case. It was an unstructured format. You just didn't realize it. But you were being assessed on all of those things that you would get assessed on in a normal case, which is the ability to be creative, the ability to be structured, the ability to be logical in your thinking process. So that's something additional that I would recommend as you're going from first round to second round to prepare for.
Love those insights. Yeah, we've been seeing, to your point, more unstructured cases, more conversational cases in the final round this recruiting cycle. So, folks, it's a good thing just to be prepared for how to respond to those. Tobe or Mark, do you have anything else that you'd like to add to this question before we move on to the next section?
I'll add one thing. This happened to me in two of my final rounds at McKinsey, where this might only be a McKinsey specific piece of advice, but normally the behavioral component of the McKinsey interview is the PEIs, right? Which is they ask you about one experience on your resume and then just continue to talk very in depth about that one experience. And they say that that's all they ask you about for a behavioral. I did have a couple, as I said, final round interviews where they asked me like your more standard interview questions, like tell me about yourself, why McKinsey, why consulting, all of that. So I know you probably have to prepare that for most consulting firms, but just minor, like just small caveat for McKinsey, I would still think about those answers going into a final round there as well, because you might be asked them, not just the PI.
Great insight. Thanks, Mark. All right. Love this. This has been awesome so far, folks. Hope you're taking notes. Next section here is on kind of case prep and improvement. And so we're just going to dive right in. Let's start with this second one first here with Tobe. How do you balance case and behavioral prep at the same time? Do you have any tips for this?
It's a very good question. So my best practice so far, and this one is constantly in refinements, is that you should have, like, if it's a pie chart, I think at least 20% of it should be, of your time should be allocated towards behavioral prep. I say this because I think most people who do get the interview or are going to get the interviews or are thinking in that direction are extremely ambitious. And so I've seen in most scenarios that they are able to ramp up very quickly once they have a very good sense of direction as to what it is they should prepare for from a behavioral perspective. Now, there's a lot of questions. I think MC has such a deep pool of behavioral questions, per consulting firm as well. I think I have all of Bain's ones for the past 5 years. So it's very easy to find. And so if you know what you're doing, then you really can get it done in a very short period of time. Now, there's something around making sure the presentation is smooth and sounding very authentic, and that can take a bit of time. And there are candidates as well who might slip because people don't think their stories are strong enough. So you do still have to refine it. But I think it should take way less time compared to getting through the 7 different types of cases, let alone the wildcard cases that seem to be popping up in all the final rounds. So I'd say focus 20% of it every week. Once you lock in a certain number of reps, you don't have to do it for a while. And then closer to the interview, you can ramp up again.
Love this, Ish. I love that pie chart. Sorry, Tobe. Love the pie chart you shared for how to kind of break up your time there. And, one of the things we tell our folks is you can't neglect the fit. Like, you got to prep for it. So don't think that everything hinges on the case. Let's skip to this last question here. What's the most efficient way to improve when I only have a few weeks left before interviews? And this one is for Mark. So say I've got, let's call it 2 to 3 weeks. Like, what are the things that are going to move the needle the most, the fastest?
Sure. Like a true consultant, I'm going to answer this in threes. So the first thing I'll say here is to focus on practice and doing, not on theory. So you can spend a lot of time just learning about all the frameworks that are out there, watching people do videos on how to solve the math. If you have that little amount of time, just start doing it yourself. That's the best way to learn, regardless of how much time you have. But especially when you're in a time crunch, you need to just get reps in and build that comfort doing an actual case or components of a case. I would say the second thing is to really focus on really drill the core skills. There are so many things that come into delivering a strong case, from knowing the process for answering each question to watching your communication and your body language, answering different questions. But I would say the 3 core things you really want to focus on are, building creative frameworks, whether it's for your upfront breakdown of the problem or for the brainstorming question, the mental math. So doing a lot of math drills. I can't tell you how many times I would open up an app I downloaded on my phone to just practice adding big numbers, multiplying big numbers in your free time, doing that. And then third, structured communication and structured numbered communication in answering all of your questions, making sure you're, very clear and articulate in everything that you're saying. And then the third thing I would say is to really know your weak spots, and don't be afraid to fail at them in those few weeks that you have. What if you're bad at math, do more math. If you're worried about not having the most creative brainstorming, just get a lot of reps in brainstorming. So I would say those three things are what you really want to focus on when like you don't have a lot of time to really learn.
Mark, how do I know what my gaps are? Like, can I self-assess? Like, what's the best way to figure out what those weaknesses and maybe blind spots are?
Maybe minor spoiler alert with the question that's to come later on, but I will say the best way to know that, again, is through practice with other people. So yes, self-reflection is good too, but I found for myself, and I find with my candidates, doing cases with, whether it's with a coach or with friends or with people who work in these consulting firms already, you need to practice with them, and you need to get them to give you feedback, at least to know a baseline, right? And to have them tell you what your key areas of development are. That is the best and most effective way to know what your weak spots are. And it's very easy to do, right? Day one of starting the prep, even if it's 3 weeks out, do a case and learn, get your baseline, figure out what your weak spots are, and you can focus on those going forward. So that's what I would say. Self-reflection, of course, is important throughout that point onward, but to get that initial baseline, you need someone to help you find it.
Beautiful. Practice and then case with other people. If you have access to experts, consultants, etc., even better. And like all of our coaches they use a diagnostic case, when you first meet. And so all of our coaches are trained on that to help you develop that baseline so that you can go through your prep, not just stumbling blindly through the dark, but you actually kind of see what your specific gap areas are. Ish, let's talk about mental math. Everybody loves math, or hates it, or fears it. One of the above three. From your perspective, what's the best way to practice mental math, not only quickly but also accurately for cases?
Yeah, I see people in two camps. Either you love it or you hate it. It's not. I don't see people in the middle. It's so true. But my recommendations are, first, I think you should build accuracy first if you have time. So you should work towards doing the math correctly. I see a lot of people doing it the opposite, where they think, oh my God, I'm running out of time. I need to be doing math so quickly. Well, you first need to do it accurately and then optimize on speed. So that should be the mode of operations, how you should do it. And then second is, I think you need to learn all of the shortcuts that there are, ways of simplifying your math, ways of thinking very quickly on your feet. So for example, I was working with a candidate this week that was writing out all of their zeros. I asked this candidate to hold up their sheet of paper to the camera, and all I saw on their sheet of paper was they were writing out all of the, like, for million it's 6 zeros, and that's a lot of zeros to write out. So do not do that. Take shortcuts. So keep in mind that 1,000 is 3 zeros. That's a K. M is 6 zeros. B is 9 zeros. Keep those in mind, and then do the rest of your operations, which is multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. Those are typically the four you're going to get. You're not going to be getting something like calculus or something complicated. It's simple operations that you're going to be asked to do. And for those, I'm biased, but MC has a ton of awesome drills and drill exercises that I always recommend people to do. So one of these tools is a math video drills, where we have our managing director, Jenny Ray, giving short prompts, and then people can basically watch those and do these math operations in a short amount of time. So those are really good exercises to get a lot of good practice under your belt. The final thing that I see people not doing enough, or in the other case, abusing it too much, is not rounding numbers or rounding them too much. So what I say is, use it, but don't abuse it. and be always mindful of if you're overestimating or underestimating your number, how is that affecting your ultimate outcome? So if you're, for example, comparing the revenues between product A and product B, make sure to round them to the same magnitude so that you are not like overestimating or underestimating one, which might lead to a different conclusion, right? And the last piece here that Mark was talking about earlier that I wanted to highlight again is think about the implication of your number. The number itself does not operate in a vacuum. It's always linked to a context, either driving you to the next part of the case or there is an insight to be gathered from there. So always link it back to the context and the implication.
That's so great, Ish. I mean, we have a 4-part structure for solving math problems, right? It's recap the problem, make sure you heard it right, structure your approach to the problem, and then step 3 is solve it. And so a lot of folks just kind of dive right into solving it. And then the last piece to what you mentioned is the insights piece, like what does this number mean in the real world for the client, etc. So that's awesome. Yeah. So to your point about math drills, I put a link down to them. And if you are a black belt or a super prep client or you're a student at a partner school, you have access to these in your management consultant account. So just go to your account, go to case interview prep on the left-hand side, and you'll find all those math drills. We've also got tons of other drills like structure drills, creative brainstorming drills, etc. So just a lot of really, really helpful drills in there. Amazing. Okay, let's keep rocking and rolling here. So much good stuff. Thank you so much, coaches. We're gonna go into a little bit deeper into this topic of just kind of preparation and practice, and then we've got some more great questions left here. So, Ish, I'll go back to you, and we've touched on this a little bit, and the answer, of course, is like it depends, like how often you need to be casing based on how much time you have left, and until your case interview. But Ish, just with candidates you've worked with, what have you seen to be just a helpful kind of metric for kind of frequency of preparation?
Yeah. Again, there is no silver bullet or one size fits all solution. Whenever I start with the candidate coaching, what I do is walk them through a number of prep plans that we have at MC, depending on how much time you have. So these can be anywhere from a week to a few months. The more time you have, the better. That's the short answer. That's why we recommend everyone to start as early as you can if you know that you're going to go through the consulting interview process, right? And just to give you guys a benchmark, the average MBA candidate at like a top business school, like a Harvard Business School, will go through intensive practice for around 3 months. Like that's what they'll go through. So if you have that kind of time, it's good. But if you have like, let's say, a month or two ahead of you, I recommend doing some kind of a daily practice. It doesn't have to be a case. It doesn't have to be full length things. It can be short drills or short practices. And of course, you want to complement that with some kind of like coaching with an expert, someone who has done this before or someone who has been an interviewer, so that you can check in with them to see how your prep is going, if you're going in the right direction or not, or if you're learning bad habits and just perpetuating them. So that's what I'd recommend.
That's super helpful. I mean, that 3 months number, it might sound insane, but it's really not an exaggeration, as you all know. And so, start early if you can. You'll thank us later. Trust me. Tobe, thought this was a unique question here. How do I facilitate pure practice if none of my friends, maybe my network, they don't have casing experience? Can I still case with them, or do I need to go outside of that to find folks who have that experience?
It's an interesting one. I mean, the absolute best case scenario is that you're casing with someone who's already worked and gone through the process, like someone who currently works or used to work at any of these firms that you're trying to get into. The next best thing is you are casing with people who are actively trying to get in as well. the last option, which is not palatable, but it's something, is that no one in the group has casing experience. And in that case, I would say before you start casing each other, you should maybe go through 5 or 7 of the MC cases and just sort of absorb it and sort of absorb it from a perspective of a teacher almost, and sort of look through what good looks like, what bad looks like in terms of the answers. Because I think one of the worst things than not casing is casing with someone who really doesn't know how to set it up, because that could send you so many wrong signals. I had a candidate who was casing and thought she was really terrible, but then I cased her, and I think she got all the way through to the final round. And she was quite confused. And it just turned out that she was casing with people who didn't know how to set up a case at all. So that can be, massive, massive backfire. So I would say, yeah, if you are going to case with people who don't have a lot of experience, there has to be a commitment that you're just going to absorb cases for at least a period of time. Maybe it's like a week where you're just absorbing how to, what the answers look like and the answer structure before you start doing it, because you could end up doing more damage than good.
Absolutely. And I'll just add one free resource to what you shared is our YouTube library of case interview examples. And so that's a great place to check out for some of those examples, and you can kind of see what good looks like. And so I've linked that here in the chat. Thanks so much, Tobe. All right, Mark, how do I know if my case prep is actually improving my skills? So this kind of builds on what Tobe was sharing. How do you know what good looks like, kind of?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I would say, just again, to build on what Tobe said, watching, I think the one thing you can do is watching best practice cases, right? And knowing knowing what a good 10 out of 10 answer looks like, and doing that self-reflection after to see if you're kind of getting closer to that, right? I didn't find that particularly helpful myself. I know that's something some people do find helpful. What I found most helpful was, again, not to sound repetitive, but I'm going to go back to what I mentioned earlier on feedback. That is the single most effective way to know if you're improving, right? And particularly feedback with the same person. So, having someone case you 3 times is, I think, much more effective than casing with 3 different people, one each, right? Or once each, because that person who's cased with you 3 times now, kind of sees that journey. And with each new case is focusing your feedback or tailoring your feedback in a, more granular way that's really building on those continued areas of developments that are still slipping through, but you're getting better along the way, and you're having someone tell you exactly how you're getting better, right? So not only are you getting that validation that it's working and you're improving on all of these areas that the last case you weren't, there's still a set of continued areas that you need to keep working on, right? And then the last thing I want to say is also related to self-reflection, but I think a lot of the time, having someone case you, people can often, or candidates can often just, take what they say as gospel, and that's it. They stop thinking about it. Not a problem, not a worry until tomorrow when they case again. But I think what's so important is for the individual to actually take time after the case and think about where they went wrong. After they've gotten the feedback, look through the last half hour, 45 minutes that you went through with this coach or, mock interviewer, and ask yourself, did this math problem feel easier? Did I get it in 3 minutes instead of 6? Did this creative brainstorming question come more easily to me this time? Or was I still going, oh my gosh, I don't know what to say, I'm going to just write anything, right? So, allow yourself to have those internal dialogues and, write down the areas that you feel got easier versus the ones that still feel tough. And that is, that's my advice for this question.
If there's one thing that people can take away from today, it's that practice, getting your hands dirty is king. And if that's the only thing you heard today, that you need to just start diving into cases, just get into it today, then I think that's a call worth shared. So, Ish or Tobe, do you have anything you'd like to add on this question before we move on?
I would say if you can, and I try to do this with my candidates, it's get your coach to actually grade the case. I think it's so much easier if they're grading it and the grading different movements, right? The scores of music within each movement of the case in real time, so that it's not in retrospect and you don't get hazy and blurry, so that you can almost sort of, if you're a bit of a nerd, maybe track how your brainstorms have gone over a time series. This kind of thing that gets me going, but you can really start to see if you're dipping or if it's increasing, what the average is, uh, and also the commentary behind each of it as well. So I think that's a really key one. And you can also feel it, but I think it really helps. It gives this sort of psychological boost if you're averaging a 2 or 3, and now you're consistently averaging a 4 or 5 or 4, like you're spiking. So I think that could be a really good one as well.
I'll add a quick thing here. Something that I did back in the day when I practiced is recorded a lot of my sessions. And while working with MC as well, a lot of these sessions are recorded and you're able to revisit those. But I know it can be very cringy to watch yourself go through that, but go back and see what your first performance was like, and then just see like a few weeks down the road, and you'll see a measurable, massive difference. And that, in my opinion, is the biggest metric that you have in terms of performance improvement.
And what you all are saying is that it's hard to improve what you don't track, and so start tracking your progress. We recommend our clients use a spreadsheet to track each of their cases, track all your feedback, track improvement, all those things. And so I love the insights that are being shared here. Amazing. All right, we've got a juicy section here, handling nerves and pressure of an interview, and then recovery. So we're just gonna dive right in. Ish, I'll give this right back to you. Do you have any tips for handling the pressure of a case interview? This specifically was from somebody who's right, like, hey, what if I get to the interview and I freak out, right? So it's a common question that we get.
Yeah, I mean, this is I hear about this all the time. So the best way to tackle this is to I strongly believe in like going through like meditative practices, or like telling yourself and embedding in mantras that can really help you psychologically before you go into the interview process, right? So I always advise folks like in the grand scheme of things, this will not matter. So just tell yourself, I know that's not something you want to hear, but you should build a practice of telling that to yourself, that what is about to happen is happen. I did my best to practice. I'm ready to go into this battlefield to take it on, and just forget about everything else. Forget about all of the little things that you are like trying to perfect all of this time. Um, I also hear a lot of candidates who really try to, in the last minute during the interview, try to fix a little thing or two. Well, this is not something you can do last minute. So all of the prep that you're doing over this period of time should get ingrained. And by the time it's game time, you should be ready to go ahead and pursue that. So those are some pieces of thoughts, but it's a lot of psychological things. It's not really related to your skill set. It's people get in their head at times, and that can ruin it. So be in the perfect mindset, and tell yourself that in the grand scheme of things, whatever happens is about to happen, and you have no control over the ultimate outcome.
I think for our sports folks on the call, the case process can be equated to that of sports, right? You trust your practice, and then once you get to the game or to the case, then you just like lean back on that, and whatever happens happens. Um, so I love that ish. Tobe, this was also a question that came in a couple times, and I saw it in the chat as well. How do I conquer fear at the beginning of a case?
It's a very good one. I think there's sort of 3 ways you could do this. And two of them I would say are easy or easier if you do a lot of prep before time. The other one might be queasy depending on your sensibilities. One, crack a joke. And now not everyone is blessed with the gift of humor. Uh, but you can crack a joke to literally just lighten the situation. And it can be at the start of the case and can be the middle of the case. So as an example, it's I was walking through the maths. One of my spikes, one of the things I was good at was maths, and I kind of thought, okay, if I'm going to screw up another section, then I better be very, very good, like unusually good at one section. So because done engineering, kind of thought, well, I can probably be good at maths. And so I was always doing maths really quickly. Uh, and then this one time in the interview, I started doing the maths. I had jumped a few steps because I was always trying to look for shortcuts. And then I got a number wrong, but it was kind of mid-calculation. I hadn't finished yet, so it was fine. And the interviewer, I guess, was rooting for me. So he kind of thought, well, slow it down there. And then I just looked at him, looked around the room, and I just started putting my hands down, like, don't be a hero, Tobe. Everyone just calm down. And I've never seen a person laugh that hard in an interview before. So it kind of, diffused all attention. Now, this doesn't work for everyone. I 100% understand that. That's not going to be everyone's method. You could be way too nervous, but I am the kind of person to make a joke in a funeral. So it's a very strong part of my personality. Uh, but if you do have a funny bone, I would say crack a joke. Now, if that would go totally wrong and get you rejected much quicker, then the other two should work. So the other one is you have to really enjoy the case. I think if you get to a point where you do not enjoy doing a case and you've done maybe 100 hours of it, it could be a sign that maybe this isn't the thing for you, and that's fine. And I think one should be very careful about letting society sort of force them into things, right? So if you've done 100 of these and you don't kind of get a bit of a kick out of it, maybe not, maybe it's not the thing. But if you do, then you should enjoy it and really enjoy it with flair. So uh, you know, you want to treat it like it's an actual job because the whole point of the case study is that you want, and the interview is that they want to feel like this person is already working here. They're just about to, like they haven't started yet. And so I think if you go in there with the mindset of bringing a lot of flair to the case, you can enjoy it. So, put on performance as much as you can. And this can be visual. It can be, obviously in the way you talk, in the way you speak, but also in little things as well. Like Bain has a very strange color of red. It's a tint, and it's used to mark all the slides, Bain red. And I got a Bain red tie before the interview, and got myself into a goatee because I think a partner had done it as well. And I just thought, well, this would just take the edge off the case, really. So if you enjoy it, you're very, very likely to conquer the fear. I think the last thing, which is very much within your control, is start strong, very strong. So if your first movements, if your case recap and your clarifying questions and your case structure is so strong, like very, very well articulated, 4/4 in every category, what you've automatically done is sort of giving yourself a halo effect. Now the interviewer wants you to actually succeed. So they're kind of rooting for you. They start to minimize your mistakes and maximize your wins. Like it shouldn't be the case. It's actually not meant to be the case. It's meant to be individual, but that's just how people are, right? So if you start very strong, it's very likely that the fear sort of goes down. So that's my more than 2 cents.
Maybe more like 5 cents. That is the most unorthodox case interview advice I think I've ever heard, and I absolutely love it. So I love what Ish also shared in the chat here. He got a case on ice cream for at BCG, and he said, "Cracked a dad joke. Thank you for this very sweet case." So for those of you not looking at the chat, that's a good one. Beautiful. We're gonna make this the last question here. Mark, would love to hear from you. What do I do if the case completely stumps me? This is a good one.
Yep. Okay. So this is tough, right? Like obviously you wish the answer was here, or I wish the answer I could tell you is just wave a magic wand and the answer comes to you. But unfortunately, that a lot of the times isn't how it works, right? So first thing you want to do is just stay calm and remember that you're not the only one. in the interview process who this is happening to. That's key, right? It can feel like you are in those moments and you feel like you're completely screwed and there's no chance, you might as well drop the call. Not the case at all. It's happened to me many times before where I didn't know the answer right away. So stay calm. There's still plenty of potential left to recover. Second thing you want to do is then just break down this very broad problem into more digestible pieces, right? Like if it's a math problem, then just, pick out literally the different words in the prompt and figure out how to solve those specific words. Like just break it down into smaller pieces and address those pieces one at a time. And maybe, 1 out of 3 of those, that's fine. Don't stress about knowing all 3 before jumping into one. Show the interviewer that you can solve something. It builds that trust, and maybe they'll start to guide you a little bit on the rest of it. And then the third thing in line with that, and also when, maybe that first one or the second thing I just mentioned fails, is think out loud in every step of the way. Tell the interviewer everything you're thinking. Obviously not like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing, help. But, hypothesize with the interviewer. Think of different ways, think of what you're trying to say and bring the interviewer along with you on that journey in a professional way. Again, don't come clean and say, I don't know what I'm doing, help. That's the only thing you don't want to say. But, suggest different things. If it's a math problem, say, here's what I'm thinking. Like, I know we have to conceptually get to this point. So the way I'm thinking that might work is by doing ABC. What do you think of that, interviewer? Right? So just test things with them, and you'll either get it or they'll say no, but they'll help you tweak it, right? The worst thing to do is to say, I don't know, and then just, kind of admit defeat. And the worst thing to do after that is to stay silent. So that, I hope that kind of helps. I know that's a scary situation, is just being completely lost, but that's how you can mitigate it.
Such good advice, Mark. Such great stuff. I feel like I could fill a book with everything that's been covered today. I'm not going to do that, but we will send out the
next week is that book.
Next week. I love it. We'll have AI write it. JK. Mm-hmm. So we're at the top of the hour, but we'll get the recording of this to everybody and make sure you have access to rewatch this and to digest it a second time, get some more of the insights out. And we'd love to answer your questions as well. So just send us an email. The email is team, TEAM, at managementconsultant.com. Send us a note if you want to get the 1-hour coaching for the previous rate, $100 off. You've got 24 hours to do that, so just shoot us a quick email and we'll get you all set up with that. And then book a session with Ish, Tobe, Mark. They love to work with you, and as you can see, they're all excellent coaches. They've got amazing processes for helping you prepare, and they'd love to meet you. All right, that is all from us. I'll leave this up here for another 10 seconds so you can scan the QR code and get connected. But thank you so much, Mark, Tobe, and Ish. Have a great rest of your day, rest of your week, and we'll see everybody on another call soon. We got one next week, so make sure you register for that one. Cheers, everybody.